Thank you very much, Bill. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm especially thrilled to be here in this space because in writing the Ellis Wilson book and doing the research, I learned that this church, Second Christian Church in Mayfield, is deeply connected to the Wilson family. It was founded by his mother, Minnie Wilson, and in fact, Ellis Wilson often referred to this church as Miss Minnie's church. So I think it's especially touching to me after researching his life and his life in Mayfield. It's especially touching to be here in this space. This is the second part of the presentation, which is set here in Mayfield, and about another person who I believe this history needs to be told. And growing up in Western Kentucky, I had never heard of the artist Ellis Wilson, even though I took a minor's degree in art history. I never heard of Ellis Wilson, but he'd grown up 30 minutes from Paducah, where I grew up. Never read about him in my art books, but probably I'm going to say around 2008, I learned about him through a project that was done by Albert Spirit, who was the director of the Clara M. Eagle Gallery at Murray State University. When he took over as the gallery director, he apparently saw this beautiful painting and he didn't recognize the artist. And he was just completely surprised when he found out that it was an Ellis Wilson, and Ellis Wilson had grown up in Mayfield. So it became his personal mission to document Ellis Wilson's work and find all of the paintings around. They're in many museums and private collections. So Albert did this. He also put together a retrospective, asked all these people to borrow these paintings, put together a retrospective exhibit that was at Murray State University and at the University of Kentucky. He also spearheaded a book called The Art of Ellis Wilson. They're essays. It's a monograph from this exhibit work. But it's a beautiful book, not only because of the art, but because it preserves the history and tells the story of Ellis Wilson's life, beginning here in Mayfield. He was born in 1899. He was always interested in art. He became interested in art through his father, who was a barber, Mr. Frank Wilson, who apparently his barber shop was just a couple of blocks, the site was just a couple of blocks down from here. His mother, Minnie, as I mentioned earlier, was one of the founders of this church. So Ellis grew up here as one of 6 children, still several Wilson nephews and I think great nephews here in town. Because his parents wanted him to be a college educated person, he went to Kentucky State University, as it's now known. It was the historically Black college in Kentucky. He studied there for 2 years. He didn't want what they offered because they only offered degrees for teaching and agriculture, and he wanted to be an artist. He knew that early on. As I mentioned, his father had taken a few art lessons from an itinerant painter who happened to be in Mayfield for a while, and he produced some paintings. And that always, Ellis Wilson credited his father in being around those paintings with his interest in becoming an artist. So because of, at the time, the segregation and Jim Crow laws, there were no art schools that would accept him as a student. until he was accepted at the Art Institute of Chicago. So like so many Black Americans at that time, he was part of the Great Migration North for more opportunities. So he studied art, classically trained at the Art Institute of Chicago. He lived in Chicago for about 10 years. After he graduated, he spent a lot of time as a graphic artist there. And then he moved to New York City, and he lived, I think it was in 1928. He lived in New York City the rest of his life. He was very much a part of the Harlem Renaissance artistic and cultural community in Harlem, and also in the East Village. He said he loved the village because there were so many artists there. He exhibited his work. He won many prizes. He was a WPA artist during the Depression, when it was so hard to make a living as an artist. He also did many other jobs. He was, he was a handyman. He was a courier. He was a night watchman at a museum. He did whatever job he needed to do in order to be an artist. So his story to me is not only a story of someone who has such immense artistic ability, but also the determination to overcome so many hurdles and to create an artistic life and to live as an artist. He was also a War Department artist during the World War II. He did a lot of posters and for war bonds. And then in 1944 and 45, he received, was one of the first African Americans to receive a Guggenheim Fellowship. So he spent 2 years traveling and painting with because of that opportunity as a Guggenheim Fellow. I wanted to read you some of his, speaking of determination. Let me loop back just a little bit. Albert Sparrow did this exhibit and the book about Ellis Wilson, and also KET produced a beautiful show called So Much to Paint. It's still available online as part of KET's educational mission. It's so good to have these resources still available. So it's a beautiful show if you've never seen it. After I watched that show, I didn't see it when it came out in 2000, but when I watched that show in about 2008, I became so intrigued by this story, not only because I didn't know about him and living so close, that his story was untold until the KET University Press of Kentucky project about him. So then I found out that his papers were housed at the Smithsonian. They were archived in the Smithsonian archives. So at that time, I'm sure they're probably digitized by now, but in 2008, still had to get the big microfiche carton to be delivered to the University of Kentucky Library System for me. And that's where I did most of my research about him. It was just fascinating. He had saved just, I think there are 300 pages of his papers in the Smithsonian archive. And he had saved all the clippings from his exhibits, from prizes, from exhibits like the one in 1952 at Murray State University at the Clara, it wasn't called the Clara M. Eagle Gallery then, but it was later named for Clara M. Eagle, who was an art professor who organized this show for him, which of course was at a time when he would not have been allowed to be admitted as a student in 1952. So Clara Eagle was an important force in recognizing this talent. He also did an exhibit at the Speed Museum in Louisville. So, and there was one at the Mayfield Public Library in the early 1950s organized, and it supposedly was the first art exhibit ever in Mayfield. And that meant, he later spoke of it in an interview, how much that exhibit meant to him to be able to show his art in his hometown and have the whole community come to see it. So after doing my research, I found during the research that his words are so important, and I wanted to rely on them in my book. I wanted to write it as a children's book too, because I think it's such an important story to realize as a young child that you want to be an artist and that you're willing and determined to take every step that you need to take. So I decided to write it as a children's picture book. He talked in his Guggenheim applications about that there was so much to paint and so little time. And he wants to paint everything of value and beauty. So to me, in writing the book, I thought it was important to let his words show and shine throughout the manuscript. And it's really tough to write a children's book because you don't have many words to convey a lot of information. So it had to be distilled multiple times to get it to the point where it's within the word limits, but still conveying what an extraordinary person he was. And we can click through some of these. So there's Mayfield at the time he would have been living here as a child. He was born in 1899. And that's the Art Institute of Chicago. It had just been built. So you can see, if you've ever been there recently, you know that there's not that kind of open space there around the Art Institute. And at the Art Institute, as a student, he painted what he was supposed to paint to learn the craft and the skill. So his early paintings are very traditional, a lot of still lifes. And then as he tried to earn a living in Chicago, he did a lot of graphic arts. And I know those are kind of blurry. They're from that Smithsonian collection. Their plan is the painting of the Negro. His life, struggle, labor, religious pursuits, the turpentine workers in Florida, Negro fishermen in the South, his all-over contribution to the present war effort. As you can see, he's kind of changing. His art is changing. It's becoming looser and more about people. And it continues to change. As I mentioned, through his Guggenheim fellowship money, he was able to travel. And he traveled a great deal to the Sea Islands along the South Carolina coast, and also to Haiti. There was an episode of the Cosby Show from the 1980s where Huxtable wanted to buy her Uncle Ellis's painting, The Funeral Procession. And so it was all about going to the auction and winning this and then hanging it over their mantle. And it stayed there for the rest of the show's tenure. You can see there's just this very distinct color pattern, and color becomes a really interesting part of his work. And also his design and shapes sort of flatten and simplify. That one on the right, the kites, that is at Murray State. That's one of those paintings that was purchased when Clara M. Eagle asked for it to be purchased. And I think this is really important. This was from the KET interview. It was so important for this man. He had a vision at a very early age. This is what he wanted. This just some of the samples of all the clippings in the Smithsonian archive. So what is really it's become in the last year when Shadeland House Modern Press decided that they wanted to publish the book. The last year has been very exciting. it is a dream team collaboration. Michael McBride is the illustrator for the book. He's a Nashville artist, and he came up today also. And I think you're going to be thrilled to see his work. The book's going to come out in November, but he's capturing the feel of the era of the people. And I'm just so proud to be associated with this. And here we are. This is Miss Minnie's church, because it was a very important part of the Wilson family life and the children's life. It was documented in this KET program. And
Well,
the children
hello,
spent a lot of
everyone.
time in this church, so they were.
So this book
That's why
is
it's so important and tender to be here today.
it's been
as we
it's a
launch
great
this.
journey that I'm
So I
experiencing
wanted-
because I knew about Ellis Wilson having gone to Tennessee State University, Historical Black College. So we studied African American art. So in the late 1970s, I knew about Ellis Wilson and the Harlem Renaissance and all. But I really didn't. It's funny to I knew he was from Mayfield, and then it's funny to, as an artist, to kind of, have this opportunity to do this. And when Virginia contacted me about doing the book, I said, "Well, how did you all find me?" And she told me that they had looked on the Society for Children's Book Writers and stuff, and saw my work and saw that, and read, of course, my profile and all, and kind of felt that the work and all, I would be the artist that could really bring this to light, which is very interesting because as we got to talking, at 8 years old, I told my parents I was going to be an artist. So I knew this, and so it's kind of following the same footstep with Ellis Wilson. And the thing is that I grew up in West Tennessee, near Jackson, but I grew up out in the rural area. So I really had no exposure to art. And my father was a bishop. Well, he was a minister and had a church, again, had a church. And so my mother would let me, the old Bibles that had all the engravings, color engravings. So she knew that I would be still in church and do everything. She let me have the Bible and I could draw. So that's what I did, in doing that. And it's interesting because as looking at Ellis's life, we were talking about that. He and I kind of traveled along the same path. I knew I wanted to be an artist, and not having art, which is very interesting, which I'm pretty sure he had the same situation. Not having art in school, from elementary school to middle school, even through high school, because in the rural, you didn't have art teachers. So my exposure was, I knew I had to go. I was an athlete, and I went to St. Louis to college on an athletic scholarship, and I studied to be an illustrator. And so never veered off the path that I wasn't going to be an artist. And and it's like Ellis, no one told me that I was going to be an artist. No one said to me, "Oh, you're going to be an artist." At 8 and 9, I didn't really know what artist was. I just told my mother, said, "That's what I want to do." And she said, "Oh, you want to be an artist?" I said, "Yeah, that's what it is." So, but this book has really been fantastic. I'm enjoying the journey with it, and as I'm reading, and Jayne is a wonderful writer. I love working with writers. I've illustrated over 80 children's books, and I love working with writers that give you a visual as an artist. When you read it, you get all these visuals happening, and that was the biggest thing with them. I was telling them is just trying to figure out what scene I was going to make out of all the possible ones that you could have. So as I'm going through this and doing this, I can understand now. I was just telling Jayne when I got here, I said, you know, it's amazing. The title is perfect, A Journey in the Color. And this book is very colorful. And that's my style. That's the way I paint. And I think it's like a perfect marriage in what we're doing. Really, really excited for it to come out. When it comes out, I think people are going to really, really love what they see. That's one of the images that you see right there in the top hand corner is of my work. And
We go back to those other 2 slides and see them.
oh yeah, you can see.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's that one. And yeah, that's the bigger of it. So as you can see, if you see Ellis Wilson's work, you begin to see the look and the feel that we have. And it's been fun, especially with the different scenes, the church scenes and other scenes and stuff that I'm doing, because I remember what it was like sitting at church, you know, and at choir practice and watching, you know, it's almost like I'm traveling through his life, and coming from a small place, you know, which was not known for art or, you know, any of that, and to rise to prominence and you know, and having this whole being exposed to the world. So it's really been good. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We can't show you any of the stuff, so that's already done. But it's been a great journey, and I'm looking forward to it, because I think we're gonna do Helen of France.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're gonna do that. That comes after this one. So I think it's the first of the year. I think. Yeah, we'll start on that. So that's gonna be fun too. I knew about her too during that time. I learned. So it's been great.
We're going to talk about your John Lewis
Oh.
too, because I think a lot of people spend time in Nashville.
As a matter of fact, I should have brought it in. I have a copy of it out in my car, and but yes, I got commissioned to do a mural in Nashville, downtown Nashville, of Representative John Lewis. And I have to tell you the story how it happened. So I read in the paper where there was these 3 artists. They were getting commissioned to do this 100-foot tall mural of John Lewis. And I looked and recognized that 2 of the artists were former students of mine, and another artist was a colleague of mine. And I stopped. I said, man, that's great. You know, it's going to happen. So, you know, I just go along. Now, I read this. I have to tell you, it's so funny. I read this last year. It was like January or February when I read it in the newspaper. Going through down. So July 13th, I'll never forget it. It was on a Wednesday. I'm sitting in the dealership having my car serviced because I was getting ready to take my grandkids to Atlanta. And my phone rang, and I saw this number I didn't recognize. So naturally, I let it go to voicemail because, and so I answered so I heard the voicemail and called the lady, and she introduced herself and said that she had an art project. I still didn't know what it was. She said, someone gave me your name that we would talk to you about it. I said, okay. And so I told her, I said, well, you know, she went on to tell me, and I told her, you know, we went on and talked a little business and all. And I said, what happened? She said, well, the other artists didn't work out. I said, oh, okay. So she met me at my studio that evening around 5:30, and we got to talking and did everything. So basically, I was the cleanup better of a situation that, you know, she had already, you know, all this money had been donated and stuff, you know, and there was nothing to show. And people kept asking her, well, what does the mural look like? Artists never came through. They never did that. So she was on the hook. Plus, she was a councilwoman. She was definitely on the hook, you know. And so I told her, I agreed. I said, I told her, you know, how the parameters were and, you know, did the contract, did all of that. And so I leave Thursday morning going to Atlanta. And that weekend they were doing the John Lewis way. They was recognizing and changing the name, big ceremony and everything. So that Thursday when I in Atlanta, get down to Atlanta that evening, I sat down and I sketch and I design and I create the drawing and I email it to her. She gets it that night. That Friday morning, she arrives at the ceremony and everything. She's just as happy as everything because she has a sketch, an idea. So she gets up and she was very diplomatic and say, well, they were supposed to unveil the mural at that time. And she said, well, she said, due to weather and difficult, you know, good politicians, they know how to do that. And so, you know, and two of the artists were there for the thing. Yeah, they were there. And they knew they hadn't done anything and all this. So then, after that, by that following Wednesday, I had her a full color sketch of what the mural was going to look like. And she told me, said, look, see, we want to unveil this in November. I said, what? Now, this is August. I said, you want to unveil it in November? Now, mind you, the mural is 63 feet tall and 55 feet wide. Okay? And I said, are you kidding me? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So I assembled two of my private students and another colleague of mine and to work with me on the mural. So me working, understand we did it in exactly 2 months. Me working 7 days a week, at least 8 to 10 hours a day. They didn't work that much, you know, but I was doing that. We got it done. We got it installed. Now, the way I paint murals is that I went in 2010. I went to Philadelphia to call the Mural Project, and Philadelphia has all of these murals. So I went to them to see how they did their murals. So I learned how they do their murals, and they do what we call the parachute method. It's actually done on panels. And then it is actually installed on the wall, because you're going to be up on a wall all these months in time. That's crazy. Don't do that anymore, but we do it on panels. So that way you're able to paint murals and you can install them whenever. You can paint them, they 5 foot panels. 5 foot, it's a long roll, but it's 5 feet tall. And that mural, John Lewis mural, has 121 panels that are 5 feet by 5 feet. And so that way with the project, I'm able to paint it in my studios. I can paint murals anywhere. You know, I can paint them for people in New York. I can paint them for people anywhere. Just paint my studio. They rolled up. So to give you a prime example, so we drove over to the site. I had 2 boxes this wide, like that. 2 boxes, and that was the mural, all rolled up in 2 boxes, like that. And so the process, and what I found out also, the paint that I use, it's out of California. It was actually strictly manufactured for mural painting. You can't buy it in the stores and all this. It's strictly for mural painting, and all the materials and stuff that I get from them, because it's all for mural painting. The colors are absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's brilliant. So the paint is 100-year UV light lasts. So the paint won't start fading a little bit for 100 years. So the color that you see, you'll see it. It doesn't fade. So if you look at murals, you see a lot of murals, they're fading. They start, you know, really bright, but then they start fading. And that's because they're just going to Home Depot and buying it regular, you know, outdoor paint for, you know, and doing that. But it's an art to mural painting, you know, process and all of that. So that's what I do with the John Lewis mural. But yeah, and I think it might be the largest of, I think it's like 6 murals in the United States right now of John Lewis, and I think that mine is probably the largest and stuff. But yeah, and you probably can go online and look at Nashville downtown murals, and you'll see it online and stuff like that. But yeah, I started painting murals in 1985, 86. And me and a partner of mine, we had a studio together for 22 years. And we started painting the first murals in Nashville. First public art murals and stuff in Nashville in now it's all the rage, you know. But and he and I just laugh, go, oh, okay, now it's all new, right? But yeah, so that's kind of it. And I've been an art professor at Tennessee State since 1993, and so that I have that affiliation with, you know, from the standpoint of being a teacher. And there's a lot of artists that I've taught that I've seen that have gone on to, you know, be very famous and prominent and stuff and all of this. And so yeah, it's pretty good. And for you Kentuckians and horse people, I have a project that I started in 1991 called Too Black, Too Fast. It's about the history of black jockeys and trainers and stuff in horse racing. And a lot of it deals with Kentucky and a lot of other places. But this project is a traveling exhibition of paintings and sculptures. And we've been up to 2 or 3 derbies, but we've been to college. As a matter of fact, we just finished the Pegasus World Cup. They had us down there for that. Yeah, big exhibition down there. They brought us down there for that, down in Miami. And so we're looking at a lot of things. This project is a multimedia project, and we have a documentary lined up, a movie lined up. We even have a stage play. We have a fact book. We have educational material, miscellaneous stuff. It's a full-fledged thing, you know, but we've been working on it a long time. So now it's beginning to come to fruition. So.
Why don't we have questions for our
Yes.
It's great. And I think it's all of it come back. Maybe even, I was losing the book and kind of put her out, you know, so often come back.
Sure. Be glad to. Be glad to. Oh, did you pull it up? There you go.
It's right there in downtown.
So just to give you some idea, the John Lewis face is 15 feet square panel, just the face. So to let you know how big that is. Oh, you had a question?
Yeah, that was the title of the book of trainers and jockey spoken English.
Oh, we hadn't come out with the book yet. But the title of the project is called Too Black, Too Fast. TOOBLACK You can probably go online and YouTube it. You'll see some stuff and all of that. Yeah.
I grew up showing gaited horses, and we had some of the greatest trainers and the wonderful.
Right.
in Kentucky.
Right. So just I don't know how many of you know this. Well, yeah, he probably knows. Well, you know, the first 15 of the first 28 Kentucky Derbies were won by black jockeys.
They're wonderful.
Yeah. And he knows their names are inscribed at Churchill down up there around. Yeah.
It's very interesting history too.
Oh, it's an incredible history.
Yeah.
It's an incredible history. And one of our things in doing it and putting it together is that it also tells you give you some different looks as it pertains to slavery. So what a lot of people didn't realize is that the jockeys and the trainers and all were not treated like slaves, because it was a partnership between the plantation owner and the owner of the horse and the jockeys and everything. So they had a partnership. So they weren't treated, they weren't field people. They weren't, they were strictly like that. They weren't tattered and everything. They were always dressed well, because you riding a horse, you had to look good. It was really a partnership. And they were making a lot of money. So, it's a whole different, I tell you the one story right quick. So Charles Stewart, this is out of New Orleans. Charles Stewart was a slave in New Orleans. Charles Stewart, he was making so much money with his master that the master wanted to split his money. So the master had hired a Chinese agent to handle Charles Stewart's money. And as a slave, you weren't supposed to earn money. You can earn money. He would actually give Charles Stewart money, write him a pass, and he would get on the train with the horse, go race up in New York. If he won the purse, whatever, bring the money and come back. Which you would have thought as a slave, he's in New York, I not to come back. But it's they weren't treated, so they didn't have that kind of mentality. So it's just interesting stuff. And he managed to buy his wife and his son freedom, but yet he remained a slave. And so his master had it written in his will that when he died, if Charles was still alive, he could be free. Yeah. Interesting. So, and you had a question.
A few years ago, we were in Mayfield on Court Square, and there was a building on the southwest corner, and it was kind of an old-fashioned men's clothing store where they have the leather belts and things. I was talking to the owner, and she said her father hired Ellis Wilson as a child to wash windows and to do decorate windows.
This Day's dress shop.
And she said that he would do drawings with soap on the windows. People would gather. And
Right.
said, "You're paying him to do this?" And he said, "Yeah, I can't get people in here until Ellis Wilson's."
I love it. I love it.
Let him do it.
I love it.
I make a lot of money. And she said she thought she had early Ellis Wilson in the attic, but she hadn't been up there to look. And I'm wondering how
She needs to go see, yes. Well, let's put it this way. She really needs to go see.
Well, no, I mean, the
Yeah.
building's gone.
Oh, his building's gone? Oh, my goodness.
Well, a woman contacted me when the book was announced, and she said that her mother was a librarian at the Mayfield Public Library when they did the exhibit, the Ellis Wilson art exhibit here. And she was a very young child, and she remembers going to the art show, and Ellis Wilson sketched her.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
asked permission to sketch her, and she has the sketches.
Oh, wow.
She sent me pictures of it. It was like, oh, wow, that is.
Let me tell you, Smithsonian, a whole bunch of people would love to have that.
How many other examples of his early work are around?
It's probably, that's what I'm saying, it's probably some around.
And that's true about Helen Francis' work too.
Yeah,
A lot of her
Yeah.
work.
Well, I personally knew her though.
Helen LaFrance.
Yeah, she was fast.
Yeah.
I knew her.
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
I mean, I was around her.
And I don't know if people really knew how famous she was.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because she was just, she's just humble and,
Yes, really was.
yeah.
She was quiet. She was,
Yeah, her work is in this famous Stieglitz collection.
But again, she had that drive to be an artist, no matter
Yeah.
where she worked in other
Right,
jobs. She
right.
always had this
I tell you
Exactly.
where I met her, where I got to know her at, was at a tobacco barn. When I was a teenager, I was working at the tobacco barn and she was there.
Uh,
We would, like, what was it, Campbell's, Alex? Campbell's tobacco barn out there on 45. You don't remember?
I remember where it was, but I don't remember
Back
that.
when
Yeah.
I worked there, she was blind.
Yeah,
I mean, they're getting me talking, and I got to know her.
yeah,
And then she got older, and I didn't see her anymore.
right.
When I
I,
was doing the research on her art for the book, you know, she was an outsider artist.
Right.
She was self-taught. Her mother taught her how to make pigments and things
Mhm.
to do it at home. So her story is she had that same passion and that same drive to
Yeah.
be an artist. But her route was very different than Ellis.
oh,
She
absolutely.
was classically trained.
Yeah.
But both of them had this, you know, this.
As an
drive.
artist, you do. I mean, at the age of 8, I know that drive they have. It's just, you know, you just know. Yeah.
Well, I think we could probably, this is why we have these meetings, because, you know, who knew it was the same church? People sharing their firsthand
Right. Right.
acquaintance and experience. I mean, that's what makes local history, I think, so special. Yeah, Ellis Wilson was a great artist, but he was also at one time an 8-year-old boy.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And you know, Helen LaFrance, then all of her success, she just stayed Helen LaFrance.
Right. Exactly. And he was the same way. Even with all his success, he was still very humble. And I think a lot of it has to do a lot with the way you grow up. You know, you're taught humility and you're taught all of that. No matter, you know, what achievements would you got, you learn to be, you know, just humble. Yeah.
Well, we can continue, I think, informally. Jayne has brought some books if anyone
Yeah.
is in need of a copy. Christmas is coming. It's a little early, but Christmas is coming. Friends with connections to LBL